all right. The name is DelMan, aka Four Eyes, the Ugly Professor, doing the review for the new Ghostface Killah. The name of the album is called Supreme Clientele Part 2. This is done on behalf of the Old Heads Network. All right, Ghostface Killah is in my top 10 rappers of all time. I have 2 Wu-Tang Clan members in my top 10 of all time, and he is one of them. I base that a lot on his discography, his rapping ability, his personality. He can be funny at times. He has like almost a total package, so to speak. He doesn't have a lot of hits, but I don't really, put a lot of emphasis on hits. He makes good albums. And I would say Ghostface has one of the most impressive runs of albums. Ghostface has like an 8 to 9 album run with no bad or mid albums. From his very first album, Iron Man, which dropped in 1996, up to what, Apollo Kids that dropped in 2010. That's like an 8-9 album straight album run with nothing bad in there, nothing mid. Everything is solid to great. He got a few classics in there, like Supreme Clientele. The first Supreme Clientele is a classic, bona fide classic. Iron Man is considered a classic by many. I consider it a classic. So he has 2 classics. He started off with 2 classics out the jump. His first 2 albums, solo albums, are classics. Not to mention he has a Wu-Tang material. The first Wu-Tang album is a classic. So he has a great discography. Great. It's just top notch. And when I'm thinking of like the best hip hop albums and my personal best hip hop albums of all time, Supreme Clientele is one of them that pops in my head. Like I think of Illmatic. I think of Ice Cube Death Certificate. I think Death Certificate by Ice Cube was one of the best albums ever made, no matter what kind of music, genre of music, whatever form of music it is. He has one of the best albums ever made. But that's on a side note. Let's get back to Ghost. Supreme Clientele is one of them albums I think of when I'm thinking like one of the best albums in hip hop history. So to make a part 2 is kind of risky, but to be honest with you, most of the time when these artists do like a part 2 to a classic album, and is a lot of years in between part 1 and part 2, is basically just title recognition. Most of the time, well, I ain't gonna say never, but most of the time it doesn't feel like a part 2 to that classic album. It's just, it builds up, anticipation, hype. You name it part 2 to a classic album that came out a long time ago. It gets a buzz going for the anticipation of the album, but that's basically the gist of it. That's basically the objective of naming it part 2 most of the time, because it never feels like part 2 to the actual classic. Like Redman dropped Muddy Waters 2 earlier this year, or late last year, should I say late last year, very late last year, I think in December last year. And it didn't feel like part 2 to Muddy Waters. The album was solid. It was okay. It was cool. But it just didn't feel like part 2 to the first Muddy Waters. This album, this Supreme Clientele Part 2 is better than just solid. I like it. But, it wasn't going to be on the level of the first Supreme Clientele. With that being said, it's much better than the last album he dropped. The album he dropped last year, Set the Tone. This is much better than that album. That was a disappointment to me. I reviewed that last year, and I thought it was just okay. And that's being kind. So that was a little biased. It might be a little less than okay, but it had some joints on there. Like half of the album I like and half I didn't. But this album is much better than that. I'm going to talk about the standout joints on here. This album has a lot of tracks, has its shared skits, and most of the songs are short. Like the first song, the first actual song after the intro. Intro is just Redman talking and shit. But the first actual song is called Iron Man. Good way to start the album off. Produced by Cheddar Bang, I believe that's the producer's name. It's short, but it's a very strong song. I like it. And that seemed to be the theme of most of the songs on the album. They're short, but good. You have some songs that are average length. That's mostly due to features, but the joints where it's just Ghostface, they're pretty short songs, but strong. And then you got another song called Sample 420, produced by DUF. I believe that's the producer's name. Features MOP. I have yet to hear a song that featured MOP that I didn't like. So I like this joint. It's like any song. I can't remember a song that MOP was featured on that I didn't like. So they do wonders for features, I have to say. Then they got another joint called Curtis May, produced by Easy LP. Easy LP, I think he used to produce, I think he did a lot of production on that first CNN album. That first Nori and Capone joint. The War Report, I think he did a lot of production on that album, if I'm not mistaken. But he does this track, and it features Styles P, Conway the Machine, Dig It. Can't go wrong with those two featured on the joint. Then you got another song called Fourth Disciple, which is produced by Fourth Disciple, one of the in-house Wu-Tang producers. Did a lot of stuff back in the day. Kind of goes under the radar, he's kind of in the shadow of RZA when it comes to producers. But it's a short story joint. So I like it. I dig it. I guess he couldn't come up with a title, so he said, fuck it, I'll just call it by the name of the dude that produced the shit. And then you got another joint called Windows, produced by Scram Jones. I like Scram Jones as a producer. I love the sample singing used on the joint. Really dig that. It makes the song pop. And you got another joint, which is a skit called Pause. It's a funny skit. It's been a long time since I laughed at someone's skit on an album. I think maybe the last skit that I remember laughing to, and it kind of stuck in my mind, was off Benny the Butcher's joint, Burden of Proof, when I think he had the mad rapper making fun of his name and shit, saying it sounded like a wrestler's name. I think that was the last skit that I laughed at as much as I laughed at this one. That pause game that Cam and Mace are famous for. He's kind of making fun of niggas overdoing that shit and using that shit, especially, when he gets to our age and shit. But I found it funny. I like that skit. That was the only skit out of all the skits that I liked. The other skits was, they okay. But that was the skit that stood out to me. Then he got another song called Georgie Porgy, produced by Ghostface. I ain't know Ghostface even produced until this album. I didn't care for the song. I still don't care for the song, even after several listens. It's just the use of the Georgie Porgy sample, I just can't get with. It's a story joint. It's based, my not liking the joint is solely based on the production. I just can't get with that Georgie Porgy shit at this point. Then you got another joint called Break Beats, produced by Ghostface. I dig it. The throwback sonics from the 80s. It has that 80s vibe. I love the beat change up. Dig that joint. Then you got another joint called Beatbox, produced by Ghostface. Has that same 80s vibe type, like Break Beats that I just talked about. I dig it. Has a female on there that assists with some of the vocals. I like it. It's a good throwback joint. I like it. And you got another kind of like throwback joint, which was the first single off this joint, called Rap Kingpin, produced by Scram Jones. I really dig the blend with the Eric B. and Rakim's My Melody elements with the Ghostface Mighty Healthy joint from the first Supreme Clientele. Like blend those two elements of beats together and it works. I dig it. I really like the song. It has like a kind of like an 80s and 90s vibe to it. I dig it. And I think I was listening to an interview that Ghostface was doing, and he was talking about how that was done by accident. He was doing a show, and I think whoever was DJing at the time accidentally blend those two songs together, and it worked. And he's like, fuck it, we use that for a song. So I really dig that shit. And on a side note, I like how Ghostface is doing his shared interviews on his rollout, because I felt like Raekwon and Slick Rick really didn't do enough as far as like going on these different platforms and podcasts and doing interviews. And Ghostface has been doing this shit. I think like Raekwon was only on 3 platforms that I can remember. I know he was on Shannon Sharp joint, the Nightcap joint with Shannon Sharp and Ocho Cinco. And then I think he was on that Leisure podcast, them guys that talk about trading in stocks and you know, Wall Street and investing in the market and all that type of stuff. I think he was on their platform, but he wasn't really on no hip hop platform. So I thought Raekwon dropped the ball as far as like his rollout and promoting the joint. I don't remember Slick Rick doing anything besides the kind of like Q&A for his documentary / videos for all his songs type thing. So I think Mass Appeal has been dropping the ball on the rollout with these older artists, but until Ghostface. But maybe that's due to the artists. Maybe the artists don't want to do that shit. You know what I'm saying? At this stage of their career, maybe that's more so on the artist than Mass Appeal. So I'm not going to put all that on Mass Appeal. But anyway, getting back to the songs track list, then you got another joint called The Trial, produced by Rose Arts. It features Raekwon, Method Man, Jizza, Reek the Villain, and Pills. Method Man plays the judge. I like the concept of the song. I like the back and forth that Ray and Ghost have, like kind of like a Run DMC EPMD type thing. And I believe Reek the Villain and Pills, they do the same thing with the back and forth. I really dig that. Another song called Love Me Anymore, produced by Jay Black, featuring Nas. I didn't care for this song at first, and that was due to using the well-known sample song of Roy's Royce, Love Don't Live Here Anymore. I was like, that's too famous, well-known classic joint to be using. But after several listens, it grew on me, so I do dig it now. What else you got? You got another song called Soul Thing. I like that. That's nice. That features a gang of folks, Nibs, Reek the Villain, I think, and a few other folks. That's a good, like, a joint, posse joint, you could say, because it features several folks. I like that joint. Then you got another song called Metaphysics. And I dig that joint. I think that's the second single off the joint. I like the use of the Biz Markie sample beat. I dig that. Then you got Candyland, produced by Sean C. and LV. I really dig it. One of my favorite joints on here. Rap Kingpin is one of my favorite joints too. That's one of the joints I like, along with Candyland, as far as like the joints that I really like the most on the album. And then you got another joint called The Zoom, produced by Ghostface. Not sure how I feel about this song due to, again, the well-known use of the Commodore's song. That's a well-known joint. I don't know how I feel about it. It might grow on me, but at this point, I'm like iffy on it. And it's a girl joint. It's a chick joint, but it's not commercial. Even though it uses the Commodore singing a lot, the Lionel Richie singing a lot on the joint. But not sure how I feel about it. At this point, I'm like, iffy on it. It might grow on me. And then you got another joint called You My Friend, produced by Ray Ray. Features Method Man. I really dig this song. Method Man kills it as usual. He always killing these features he's on, and this is no different. The song is self-explanatory. It's about the definition of a friend, how to be a friend, etc., etc., things of that nature, dealing with friendship. I really dig the joint. That's like the last actual song on the album. Then you got like a skit at the end called Knuckles, you know. But overall, I really dig this album. I give it a strong B plus, real close to an A minus. It was nothing outright that I didn't care for besides Georgie Porgy. Like I said, that's due to the production, but this is a strong comeback from that Set the Tone album. Is it on the level of Supreme Clientele, the first one? No, not even close. But it's good. It's good. I like it. So, subscribe, like, and all that good shit. And I'm out.